In June of 1940, the steel tread of the German military machine rolled into the center of Paris. Within days, the boulevards and public squares were swarming with the presence of the occupying army. The city's artists and intellectuals recognized the immediate reality of the invasion. Most packed whatever they could carry and joined a desperate mass exodus toward the south. To remain meant risking capture or displacement in the chaos of the retreat. For those targeted by the new regime, flight was a matter of basic survival. It is the moment where the creative impulse meets its most brutal limitation. When faced with mechanized fascism, a paintbrush lacks any immediate physical utility. In the summer of 1940, the consensus was clear. Survival required physical escape, as art had no power to stop an invading army. But the world's most famous artist definitively refused to join the retreat. Pablo Picasso stayed. He had been in Paris since 1904, and he chose to entrench himself in his studio on the Rue des Grands-Augustins, surrounded by 4 decades of his own work. Why remain in a city where you are marked as an enemy, only to make art that cannot change the reality of the occupation? By staying, Picasso began a process that would define the next 4 years, a transformation of his studio into a site of singular, focused creation. The once vibrant cultural capital of Europe fell quiet, structurally dominated by the machinery of war. Picasso was anchored to these streets. This was the city where he had spent decades inventing entirely new artistic languages. His studio served as a repository for his life's work, a history he was unwilling to surrender to the advancing German army. The suffocating physical confinement of the occupation years forced a relentless period of unprecedented, obsessive artistic concentration. With the outside world inaccessible, the artist projected the sheer weight of the period onto canvases. The Weeping Women series became the primary expression of this era's suffering. Sharp, distorted lines capture the intimate grief of Dora Maar, tracing individual distress. But the canvas expands, morphing the facial geometry into a broader map representing universal trauma. He achieved this without painting literal tanks or soldiers, focusing instead on the era's intense psychological pressure. The work fulfills the requirement of its historical moment. It remains both a specific portrait of a woman and a general depiction of a period saturated with suffering. These paintings were profound, yet they did nothing to alter the physical reality of the military occupation outside the studio doors. Picasso's realization was that art is a response to circumstances, that it cannot change, but can, perhaps, survive. Military force is inherently temporary, requiring constant energy to maintain. A canvas, once created, simply exists, waiting for the conflict to exhaust itself. Eventually, the heavy structures of force crack and dissolve. They belong to the timeline of history, which is a timeline of eventual collapse. In 1944, the 4-year occupation ended. The forces that once seemed invincible surrendered the city. The ultimate power of the artwork lay in its persistence, the definitive ability to outlive the war itself. We can now move out of the dark, confined reality of the 1940s studio and into the illuminated galleries of the present. The proof of Picasso's strategy is in the literal presence of these canvases. As the text observes, the surviving is what the canvases are, still in the museums where they hang. In times of crisis, the act of creation is a deliberate physical claim on the future.